This episode may contain language or discussions that may be offensive or triggering. Refer to the episode summary for details. And welcome to the SheConfidential podcast. My name is Charlene Ketchum, and today I'm having a really important conversation with Kristen KB Newton. She is the founder and CEO of Heart Convos, and today we are talking about friendship, sisterhood, and all the headaches and challenges that can come along with that. So thank you, Kristen, for chatting with me today.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to have this conversation.
So one of the reasons I wanted to have this talk with you, first of all, I've been following you on social media, and you have a lot of content and conversations around boundaries. Mm-hmm. And it's just, and this is something me and my friends talk about all the time, whether it's family or your friends. Boundaries. And we may not call it that, but it's like we'll say people are draining us, or this is just too extra. And you have a hard time establishing and maintaining those while also just like having these relationships with people that you do love and like most of the time, but they can still be extra and draining. And so that's what really attracted me to your content, because I was like, okay, she's keeping it real on here, talking about something that a lot of us deal with, but we don't know how to articulate.
Yeah, I think that when it comes to just relationships in general, I don't know that we're ever quite taught how to appropriately do relationships in our adulthood. And I don't know that we start really thinking about things like our boundaries and expectations and having, the deep, hard conversations until we have to. We're already in it. And then it's like, oh, I got to figure this out. And so don't even add friendship to the mix. Friendship is absolutely something that most adults don't think about because most of our life, friendship has happened organically. Like, we're friends because we live in the same neighborhood. We're friends because we go to the same school. We're friends because we're in the same grade. We have the same lunchbox. We both wear pink on Wednesdays, whatever it is. Like, we're just friends because we have these things in common. And having things in common isn't enough as an adult to take one friendship from one season to the next. And so friendships then start to become draining or exhausting or a burden. Like, I enjoyed you in one season, and for whatever reason, I just don't even want to respond to your text or answer your calls, or I'm avoiding you. There's like this feeling of dread I have, right? And so the question, it does become why. And I would say if this was an elevator speech, which is not, so I'm glad we're going to be able to unpack it. But I would say part of it is because we're not having the heart conversation, like in our relationships. And Heart Combos is really something that I live and I breathe every single day. I would not be able to post a social media post if I wasn't living half the stuff that I was talking about, right? I would feel awful. And so the work that I've been doing the last 15 years and the last 4 personally and the last 4 years professionally really comes out authentically because it's just how I'm navigating my own life and relationships and what I'm learning in the research and with the clients that I have.
Yeah. Wow. And you said something huge there that I had never heard anybody say, and it actually is reassuring that just because you have things in common, that doesn't mean that person, or just because you have things in common doesn't mean that person is your forever, all seasons person. It gets to a point where that's not enough. And I think we struggle with acknowledging and accepting that.
Yeah. And, there's those relationship dynamics are absolutely necessary. I think what can happen as you kind of live enough, you've experienced enough heartache or disappointment or whatever, you start to then draw these conclusions, right, about how relationships work. And you'll say to yourself, like, hey, once we stop having things in common, because other relationships have fizzled out when that happened, that's just how it has to go with all these other relationships. And it's like, well, no, that's not necessarily true, but that's how we live our life. We shape our future and our life based on our past narratives. And so our experiences, the stories that we've been told, the stories that we tell ourselves influence how we lean in and look into or look forward to, like what's to come. And if you haven't had enough positive experiences under your belt, again, the idea of friendship, the idea of relationships is just like, ooh, that's a lot. That's why I don't do people. You get what I mean? Like, people just like this. This is it. And I would just say, I hear you. I understand. I empathize, especially being a recovering trash friend. I get it. At the same time, I would also say you were made for deep, meaningful connection. You were made for relationships that are significant, that matter to you, that satisfy your needs. And again, will they be, long BFF, kind of thing? No, but that's not the point. The point is learning how to, one, develop deep, meaningful connections with people and enjoy those deep, meaningful connections for however long the season will be when it is. And when that season is over, not to have burned those bridges so that
Mm.
as you move forward, again, you're allowing your experiences to add value to and to produce good fruit for the relationships to come.
Yeah. Ooh, you just said a whole bunch of truth. Like, so I, I grew up always hearing that you can't be friends, the women can't be friends with each other. That was something that was always said in my family. My grandma, and she says that to this day. Somebody talks about their friends. She's like, you better watch her. She's just not a believer in women being able to get along with each other. And I see that a lot, especially with Black women, that we feel like that maybe we can't be vulnerable and open, and that there's some kind of distrust for one another. And a lot of it, I think, is just something that's generational, that's been kind of passed down to us. It's not accurate, but it's been something that's been passed down. So can you talk a little bit about like where that mindset comes from and how that might impact us even being able to develop those connections, healthy connections with other women?
Absolutely. What you're referring to are kind of, I used the word narrative earlier. There's another word that I use in my space. It's called like your construct. Everybody has a construct already built around how life works, how people works, how money works, how health works. You know what I'm saying? How relationships work, how marriage works. We have these constructs. Now, again, there may be something helpful about your construct. There may be things that are unhelpful about your construct, but the goal is for you to know that you have one. Okay. So when you're asking this question, like, well, how do we navigate that and how do we deal with that and where'd that come from? It came from your experiences, your constructs,
Mhm.
the stories that were told to you, the stories that you tell to yourself comes from your own perspective. Like everything that makes you who you are, how you are, and why you are is happening, right? Is being shaped by everything that happens in life. And you take all that information and again, you form that construct and then you start making your decisions out of that construct moving forward. So when a person finds themselves in a place where they're like, I don't like the fruit that I'm seeing in my life, they have to be willing then to understand, well, how does fruit develop? Where did that fruit start? Oh, some roots. Okay, well, you can't just go pulling up roots and all things. I mean, you could, but then you just be left with nothing, right?
Yeah.
And so the goal is not just to go and start pulling up stuff and getting rid of, you know what I'm saying, like all the things that haven't been serving you, as much as it's about starting to plant new seeds that bear different fruit in your life. And so what that looks like practically, it looks like being able to acknowledge, I think this because my grandmother thinks this. Now, how she got here, I don't know. But my grandmother has sworn
Hmm.
since I was younger that, oh no, women can't be friends. Women are catty. You know what I'm saying? You can't trust them. They're gonna stab you in your back soon. They're gonna take your man. They're gonna do all of the things
Hmm.
that we've been told.
Yeah.
You have to understand like that came from her. And I have
Hmm.
adopted that mindset, those feelings, right? That behavior, and it is not serving me. It is not satisfying me, right? It is not
Yeah.
fulfilling me. So because I want different fruit than what that mindset and that construct has been producing, I need to probably go back to my own thoughts, feelings, beliefs, perspectives, attitudes, right? And
Yeah.
change those things. And how do you do that? Well, that's a work that I think that's the overwhelming work that I think people aren't willing to do. They like, oh, that exhausts them to even thought of it. Like they're just like, oh,
Yeah.
oh my God, you telling me that I gotta go think about what I think about? Yes, yes, you gotta go think about what you think about because we're not taught to think about what we think about. You want to know what
Yeah.
happens? We sit in academic and educational systems our entire life that tell us what to think, what to believe, how to live,
Hmm.
and then we go and we emulate that, and then we're like something's not meeting my needs. I'm not
Hmm.
seeing my expectations fulfilled in the way that I thought they would be. But when you actually get to the point where you know how to think about what you think about, Game changer. And again, that's the work that we're doing behind the scenes off social media, right? In the Heart Convos community, helping people really to understand, like, who are you? Who are you? Why are you? How are you? Right? When you understand that, oh my gosh. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can look into your mirror and make sense of what you see. Baby, let me tell you
Mhm.
what is Alicia words. Friendship, relationship. Because you get what I'm saying? Because you can walk
Yeah.
into a room full of people that you might find your most significant inner circle friend, or you might just find people that you just kick it with on a Saturday night. I don't know. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? But it doesn't matter because you're no longer walking into rooms for validation. You're not walking into rooms desperately like searching for somebody to satisfy you and to give you value. Like, you're essentially like, you're walking to a room and you're like, what can I add here? You know what I'm saying? Like, and looking for opportunities to connect, not believing that, oh, everybody in here is going to be talking about me and she don't want the best for me and she trying to, it's like, I don't even got time or space for
Mhm.
that. But it's only because I've changed my narrative about the possibility of what relationship could look like with women. Does that make sense? What I'm saying?
Mhm. Yeah. I love like the strength and everything that you just said. I mean, you just said a lot. That's just like wow. Think about we got to think about what we think about. Like that's heavy for a lot of people because that requires you to think about how you feel about you. Because a lot of times we talk about our friends draining us and we talk about our relationships, whether it's with our intimate partners or family members. But one of the things that I heard and what you just said is it all comes back to us and how we feel about us. Because if you good with you and you know what you need and you know what you bring to the table, you know what your limitations and your capacity is with the table, then you're not worried about, you're not intimidated by. You understand where your boundaries need to be because you know where your goal, you know what your finish line is. It starts with you. I mean, it's like we spend all this time talking about other people draining us and being trash or extra or whatever, but it's really us. We being trash to ourselves.
Listen, when you when a person when a person finally comes to the reality that it's not them, it's me. Because again, what happens is we get so inundated and focused on identifying the toxic, narcissistic, you know what I'm saying, like crazy people in our life. We just looking for those people. So guess what we find? Those people. You know why? Because we looking for them. Like, people be so mad. Like, I just feel like I keep attracting, and like, you want to know why you keep attracting the kind of people you keep attracting? One, you're probably planting seeds that is bearing that kind of fruit, right? So if you plant seeds of pettiness, you are attracting petty people. We're not gonna go there though. But then, but then
Mhm.
also, uh, the reason why you're attracting those people is because you're looking for those people. You don't even you don't even know, you know what I'm saying? Like how to like look for like committed people, loyal people, faithful people, genuine people, authentic people, honest people, people who are willing to like have the hard conversation and not be overwhelmed and feel like they have to run away from conflict and avoid it and beat around the bush. Like you're looking for all of the other things, but a part of that is because that is what you know. But I can't have these conversations with people on Instagram because they be like, "Ooh, I don't like that,"
Yeah.
right?
Oh yeah.
It's like
Yeah,
swipe. We
because
got
everybody's looking for a narcissist. They want you to tell you the red flags. Like, I have never, and this is like a pet peeve of mine. I know this ain't what we're talking about, but it is what we're talking about. Because the big thing now is everybody has narcissists all around them. And they
everybody.
want you to tell them, what are the red flags for me to spot and deal with these narcissists? Y'all didn't even know what a narcissist was, most of you, like 5 years ago, but you heard the buzzword and they're wrecking such havoc on everybody's lives. So
Mhm.
everybody has to point out the narcissist and how we can deal with them instead of how you can deal with yourself.
For sure. And again, really, let's just say you happen to meet a narcissist. Let's just entertain the idea that if you know how to spot a narcissist and you find yourself in a relationship with one, that you'll know what to do. Well, let me just tell you, this is what the secret will be to navigating a relationship with a narcissist. The secret will be for you to know who you are, to understand how you are and why you are. And while you're doing that, you're having heart conversations with yourself. You're being honest about where you're at. You're addressing elephants in the room with yourself. You're practicing showing up as your most authentic self. You're addressing real issues in real time, and you're being transparent. When you're doing that, those things in and of itself will be unattractive to the narcissist. Not only that, when you have real expectations and boundaries, real being REAL, so recognized expectations and boundaries, expressed expectations and boundaries that have either been accepted or not accepted, which a narcissist will not accept, probably your healthy expectations and boundaries. Therefore, y'all will not be able to live out, again, REAL, you will not be able to live out the relationship together. So therefore, the relationship will not last. Like your relationship with a narcissist should not last and will not last the healthier you are. So again, all of these, I just need to know how to look for the red flag, all that kind of stuff. It's like, well, here's the thing. If you haven't done the work to look at you in your mirror, it don't matter. I can give you a whole checklist for how to identify a narcissist, but it won't matter because you can't make sense of what you see within you. And years of attachment research continue to show us that the people who have healthy attachments with other people have healthy attachments with themselves. So if you're trying to figure out how to have a healthy attachment with another individual, you have to be healthily attached to yourself. What does that mean in just plain common sense language? If you can't make sense of you, you can't make sense of nobody else. And you definitely you can't help anybody else make sense of you. It's very simple. You get what I'm saying? So you do the work to make sense of you. So that way, when you find yourself in a relationship with another person, you'll be able to identify quickly, one, they've not done their work to make sense of them. And I can see that up front. Therefore, I already know I don't want to invest here, right?
Yeah.
Or you'll meet another person who you're like, oh, okay, they seem like they've done some work on themselves and they seem like decent people. Okay, I think I want to invest. But then you'll be able to start saying like, the return on the investment that I'm getting, I don't like. And you'll be able to measure that against something. Why? Because you know you. You know what you want. You
Yeah.
know what you need. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know you. So then you can then decide then, we're at this stage in the relationship. I don't want to go any further. Or you'll be in a relationship where you're investing. You're seeing a return on your investment, whatever that is for you. And then you'll be like, yo, like, I have just experienced so much life and joy and freedom in this relationship, and I want more of that. And you'll continue to invest, and that stuff will continue to. You'll start gaining interest on that relationship. That interest will start to compound, and eventually, you ain't even got to talk to that person every day. Y'all can not talk to each other for 3 months, pick up where you left off, and be like, "Man, I missed you." Right? Like those are the kind of
Yeah.
relationships that we want. Well, we look forward to seeing the person coming. We look forward to getting a text from them. You know what I'm saying? Like our hearts leap, you know what I'm saying? Like when we're in their company because we're aligned, you know? But again, we can't cultivate those kinds of connections looking for social media posts that tell us the 7 signs of identifying a narcissist. Like that's not going to solve your relationship problem.
Yeah. Yeah. Woo, thank you for that. Thank you for that. A lot of people don't realize that they need to do work on themselves though. So because there really are a lot of people who are like, I just keep attracting and I give, and I love hard. So I want to talk about that statement.
Yes.
I love hard. Because I had an epiphany about what that meant for me, but I would like to know with your professional experience and research, what does that mean a lot of times when people say that they love hard?
Well, I don't know what other people mean. I can't speak for them, right? But I am an 8 on the Enneagram, and so I'm not quick to love, but when I do, I would probably use that phrase, I guess, to express that like, hey, once you have me, you have me, right? Once you have my loyalty, my trust, whatever, like you have it. Once you have my love, you have all of it, right? It isn't this incremental, like I'm just gonna give it to you. You give it to me, and you have all of it. So I think when a person says like, I love hard, it's their way of communicating that I give freely, generously, passionately, fervently. You get what I mean? Like I give it all when I give it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think. Does that answer your question?
Yes. And I was thinking also about attachments and lack of boundaries that can come along with that.
Yeah.
Because people can love harder. And I'll speak about myself. Because in loving hard, like all those things, that's how I love. But what I discovered through doing a lot of personal work and reflection was that it's great to love hard, but I needed to hold myself accountable and my failure to discern who I was giving that to, and when I wasn't imposing boundaries. That was like, I knew I need, like, okay. And it's not just talking even about romantic relationships, because a lot of times the biggest challenges we have are with our family, because you
Mm-hmm.
don't necessarily think I need to impose boundaries. These are my people. So whatever, no matter how it's depleting me emotionally, mentally, spiritually, physically, financially, like I
Mm-hmm.
love these people and I'm a ride or die for them. I'm
Yeah.
down for them.
Yeah.
No holds barred. But that's not healthy, not for them or for you. And so I had to learn that in loving hard, that's great, but the way you're loving hard could maybe for me be an indicator of problematic boundaries and problematic attachments as well, when it becomes an unhealthy thing. The minute it starts being a burden, or there's resentment, or it's a hindrance to my personal wellness, my goals, my peace of mind, meaning is that alignment. Me loving them is not in alignment with my needs. That's when it's like, okay, we need to look at this, because now, Charlene, you're not imposing the right boundaries. You got some attachments to these people, because sometimes we love hard and cling to people because it makes us feel good. I can't get my joy and pleasure just from just depleting myself. That's problematic. So I learned, for me, like, I have to really practice discernment to make sure that the boundaries that I am imposing or not imposing are in alignment with what's best for me. And I think it's really hard for people who tend to love hard to be mindful of that, because I see it a lot, and people will excuse mistreatment from other people. They'll say, well, I love hard, so that's why I keep getting caught up like this, because I just love hard. And I'm like, I think you need to talk to somebody, because I think you don't understand boundaries.
Correct. And I think you make a great point to the person that would say that they love hard. Like, I love hard. When I'm in and I give it all. But that has resulted in a lot of heartbreak and resentment and broken trust and toxic relationships. So I need to stop loving hard is usually what people deduce, right? Like, there has to be something wrong with how I'm loving. So I'm going to change that about me, which you make the incredible point that you being someone who loves hard, who goes hard and gives wholeheartedly to an individual, like, there's nothing wrong with that. And that's the part that frustrates me with advice on social media, because people will say things like, sensitive people, or, caring people, or generous people, like, you have to be careful because I was like, well, I don't have to be careful because I'm generous.
No.
I have to be careful that I don't have any boundaries. It should
Yeah.
more so be like generous people with no boundaries have to be
Yes.
careful. You get what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
generous people who don't, or you know what I'm saying? Like, people with needs who don't express their expectations, they should be
Yeah.
careful. What I think happens though is people feel like the way that they are, who they are, how they are, why they are, something's wrong with that. You're
Right.
making me feel like I can't be who I am in a relationship. Oh, you got absolutely. I want you to be who you are in a relationship.
Right.
So then a person will come into a relationship trying to be something different, trying to hold back, trying not to be their most
Mm-hmm.
authentic self, because they've learned, if
Mm-hmm.
I am my most authentic self, that this is not going to work. No, no, no. You being your most authentic self wasn't the problem. You didn't have the
Right.
right systems, framework, language, understanding for how, you know what I'm saying, like, relationships progress, how depth happens, how connection is
Mm-hmm.
formed, and like, those are the things that we're missing. So take
Yeah.
your goodness, your great, you'll take your amazing self and get you some of these other things, and you'll be all right. You get what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Don't feel like you
Yeah.
can't be you. But because other people who are giving advice also don't understand systems and how connection works and all that kind of stuff, I wouldn't say it's intentional, but you're creating content
Yeah.
that's making people feel like, oh, I am the issue.
Yeah.
But the issue is you don't have language. The issue is you don't understand the art of connection. The issue is you don't understand, like, levels and degrees, you know what I'm saying, like, of attachment. You don't understand attachment styles. You haven't made sense of your own narrative, of the constructs that you're bringing to the table. Like, there's so many other things, but you and your passionate self, your outgoing self, your loud self, your introverted self, whatever, like, all of that, that's fine. You don't got to start trying to be an extrovert if you're an introvert. People say stuff like that. Well, you just need to be more extrovert. No, you don't. Be introverted. just get you some frameworks, get you a system. You don't have to use all this personality and language and be around, large groups of people to make friends. Like, you don't. But people will tell you that's how you make friends. Like,
Yep.
again, soapboxes I don't often get on social media, but yeah, because the only reason I get so passionate is because it breaks my heart that an individual would conclude that the reason
Yeah.
I have not experienced deep, meaningful connection at this point in my life is because something is wrong with me and the way that I am and how I show up in the world. And that is what I believed for a very long time. And just that I was too much and that no one could befriend me and really know me. And people were always going to be intimidated by me, feel, over like I was overbearing or that I just took too much space up in the room. Like I just believed certain and then I learned oh, actually, there are communities of people that exist who make space for all kinds of folks.
Yes.
And everybody can be who they are, how they are, and know why they are, and help other people in the room understand that because they've done their own work, and nobody feel threatened, and nobody feel overlooked or unseen. You get what I mean? And that's again what I am trying to create with Heart Convos, beyond the friend tips, beyond the reels, and all of that stuff. Like this is really what I am championing for.
Yeah. Yeah, the quality of our relationships is a game changer. It's everything. It's everything. It's a key component of our wellness. If you don't have healthy relationships, it's just, yeah, it makes life so much harder. People need
You're
people.
gonna die.
Yeah. You need people.
If you don't have quality relationships, you're gonna die. Just that's the I don't know if you was waiting, if it's a spoiler alert, but spoiler alert, if you don't figure out how to do relationships well, you're gonna die. And maybe not physically, but there will be that dark night of the soul. Like there will be this hopeless, you know what I'm saying,
Yeah.
empty void. Like you know what I mean? Why? Because
Yeah.
again, no one was made to do life alone on this earth. And I don't mean that's not code for everybody's meant to be married. Like to your point earlier,
Right.
this isn't even romantic relationships. Just in
Mhm.
genuinely, you were made for deep, meaningful connections outside of your boo and outside of your family. Because them are the two
Yeah.
that people feel like, oh yeah, well my deep, meaningful connections, I got family and I got bae. And I'm like, here's the thing, let's say you're not born into a family that's about
Yeah.
this life, and let's say you don't ever get married, then what?
Yeah.
You's gonna die alone? And what? No. Again, everybody was made for deep, meaningful connection.
Yeah. And I appreciate that that people do not have to tone down or tone or turn up themselves to fit into a space. Every room ain't for you, and it's heartbreaking. It makes me really sad because I know people, and especially when we talk about our target audience is Black women, but Black women are not all the same, even though me, I can be, and people watch the show, I can be absolutely ratchet and talk about some crazy shit. And then I can also talk about, love, and I can talk about spirituality and all these things. I can take it where I need to take it for that particular zone. But I think that we need to do a better job of holding space for people to be who they are as well. And when you start doing the work, on yourself, it's not a burden anymore to accept other people because you so good with how you are. It's like I'm not bothered by Cardi B doing whatever she want to do because I'm like, look, that may not be how I'm gonna move, but girl, hey, that's what's up. Get your money. Get your money. Be happy. So that's the part that I want for us to do that work for ourselves because that makes it easier to show up and show out for other Black women just living in their joy, whether they are a Black woman who's into sci-fi. I love that they have these communities. You can find your people. If you're a sci-fi girl, if you are a nerdy Black girl, there's a website, Nerdy Black Girls. That's what's up. There is a tribe for you. So don't try to fit in with these beauty queens or these cheerleaders or even, the soccer moms. If that's not your tribe, that's okay. And we got to start creating space for each other to just live in our realness.
That part, you dropped a whole bomb when you said you will not. I'm gonna be paraphrasing it, but I just hope on the replay you'll be able to cut it out because literally it was so beautiful. Just like this idea, like, hey, when you're doing your own work for yourself, like you're not threatened by anybody else. You're able to more easily make room for other people when you've already made room for yourself. You get what I mean? Like you don't feel like anybody's taking up space because you know that no one can take up the space that you occupy. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like to your point, what is for you is for you. You get what I mean? And you can be fully known and fully loved, like what I'm saying, with the people who align. You know what I mean? Like with you. And even with that, I do want to say this, like there's not a one size fits all when it comes to relationships. And so I just want to encourage the listeners not to put that pressure on yourself to have to your inner circle person or your inner circle friend has to look a certain way, or maybe the friends that you go kick it with on a weekend have to look a certain way. Like I teach this thing called the 5 levels of connection, where I pretty much just explain, your level 1 friends are at the top of a funnel. So if you think of like an ice cream cone, it's wider at the top, and then your level 5 friends are your deepest friends, and it's like smaller at the bottom. So naturally, there's always going to be more people that you know in those surface level relationships. But the deeper you go, the smaller those circles are going to get, right? Well,
Mm-hmm.
all 5 of those levels are necessary. And sometimes, even when people come into my world, they think, well, the goal is to get to the bottom. The goal is to get to level 5 in
Yeah.
with all the relationships that I have. And I'm like, no, 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 no.
Mm-hmm.
The goal is for you to understand, one, that there are levels to this thing, so you don't have to treat everybody the same. Also, that there is a place for people to grow deeper, but there's also a place for relationships just to move up if the season changes. So it's not
Mm-hmm.
oh, we either friends or we not. Because people typically have like those two extremes, right? We either close or we not.
Yeah.
We friends or we not. You an associate,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? Like it is like, no. And we know that
Yeah.
people, to your point, the variety of people that we meet on a day-to-day basis, those people all can't fit into one definition of
Right.
connection or closeness,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if I want to make space for this friend that oh my gosh, we went through the trenches together in life, but you know what I'm saying? Like our relationship is
Yeah.
deep. Like what connected us in that season that we were talking every single day is life,
Mm-hmm.
right? But at the
Yeah.
same time, you live across the country in a completely different time zone. I live over here. We got completely different lives and we don't talk ever. It's like, well, where does that
Mm-hmm.
relationship go if you're telling yourself a story that says, we have to talk all the time, we have to hang out, you have to know what's
Yeah.
going on in my life for me to feel connected to you? Well, then, now that deep relationship that is no longer as meaningful as it used to be has to be thrown away. When I would argue, actually, you need that relationship. You need relationships with people that are meaningful, I mean, that are deep but not meaningful.
Yeah.
But nobody wants to say that. You get what I'm
No.
saying? Like, we don't want to say that. But I'm
And
like, you need
that's why.
space for them. You literally,
Yeah.
so once you understand those levels of connection and how people grow into deep relationships and how deep relationships can transition back to just casual relationships, then there's not all
Mm-hmm.
this cutting people off, pulling people out of your relationship funnel. Like you literally have a place for every single person that you meet, and there are appropriate boundaries and expectations for each of those levels, and that's what I teach inside of my Make Better Connections challenge. It's what I teach inside of my world on my app, like all those things, like to help people understand, like you've been doing it this one way for so long. There's so much more, and you don't even know it, right? And so,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. It's perfect. I mean, sometimes you just got to fall back. You ain't got to cut them off. And I
right.
used to be like, so like my cutoff game was strong. It's like, look, I ain't got a problem. I mean, look, when I determine that I can't vibe with you, I will cut you off. Like I won't think about
Mhm.
you. And it's no hostile feelings. It's like once
It's gone.
it's gone. Like I'm like I don't know you.
Mm,
But I've learned that in most instances, and it's got to be extreme for somebody to make me want to go there, but I hear a lot of people promote that, like cutting people off, and my cutoff game is strong. And again, social media, it's like we're not teaching people how to work through things and process things. Like everything doesn't have to be black and white. And I'm a very black and white person in terms of, because it's easier.
Yeah.
That's less
Oh,
thinking.
yeah.
Like you don't have to think about what you think
Yeah.
about when you look at things as black and white. It's like
That part,
either this or
that
this.
part, you said it. You do not have to think about what you think about when you're cutting folk off. Cutting people off is like, ooh, I don't like how I'm feeling. I'm done. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yep.
ooh, that hurt. I'm done. Versus, ooh, I don't like how I'm feeling. Well, what am I feeling? Okay, where's that coming from? How long have I been feeling this way? You know what I'm saying? Like, what triggered it? Like, you start asking questions about how you feeling, you might actually find that said person has nothing to do with with where them feelings are coming from.
Most of the
Now, I'm not
time.
saying that they didn't trigger it, that they didn't, you know what I'm saying, flare it up, but you can at least get to the root. Like, oh, that's not really them. Like, I actually feel this way because I'm bringing stuff from another relationship over, or because I've got an insecurity there and they keep touching on it or whatever. And it's like, well, once you can think about what you think about, how you feel, all the things, now you can have a conversation with that person and set a boundary or express an expectation and say, hey, every time this happens in our relationship, it pushes me to this place and I don't want to be in that place anymore. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I'm telling you so that maybe we can figure out how to work through it, or that so you could just know, like, if at all possible, could you not do the thing, whatever the thing is, right? And then you can tell, like, again, if that person's like, oh, I'm so sorry and I hated that this happened and it's not my intention, you start to hear their motive and their intent. And then you can decide, like, oh, your intent aligns with me. Like, your motive aligns with me, which means that there's room for us to probably go deeper here. Or the person is going to make excuses and be like, well, I didn't mean it that way, and you shouldn't have. And guess what that's going to do? That's also going to help you to know, okay, I see where we are here. I'm going to go ahead and move you right back on up to level 2. Like, so holler at me if you're going to such and such a show the other, on Thursday. But outside of that, I'm not going there with you. You get what I'm saying? Like, anymore, because I know that you're not a safe space for those other areas. Again, you can make sense of what's happening, how it's happening. You can create opportunities for your relationships to grow deep when you have, again, healthy ways of thinking about your relationships, systems and frameworks to help you think through how connection works, which, again, is what I'm all about.
Yes. See, folks need to be working with you. So I wanted you to, because I love social media. I know a lot of people are like, social media destroys relationships and everything. And when I talk about it, I'm talking about it for adults. I do have some issues with social media for young people, but for adults, that's a whole nother topic. But for adults, I love social media because there is access to a lot of amazing resources and professionals that you otherwise would be really hard pressed to find. And the other thing that I try to encourage people to do, which is what I do even before I reach out to people to talk to for SheConfidential, is I observe. I try to observe, not just how many followers they have, because people get caught up on that and they think that the number of followers somebody has is an indicator of their qualifications for your life. I'm not talking about degrees when I talk about qualifications. I'm like, for their life, because everybody's energy ain't the same. Everybody's messaging ain't the same, and it may not be for you. So you got to look at that person and figure out, where do they fit in to where I want to go? Not where you are today, because it's a lot of hurt people who get on social media and they're looking for people to feed that hurt or the trauma bond in that hurt. So you want to find somebody that can help you get to where you want to go. If you broke right now, you need to be following the people who are going to help you generate and be able to manage wealth. If you're trying to have better relationships, you need to be trying to follow and find the people who can help you cultivate meaningful, helpful, healthy, lasting relationships. Not folks who are going to be talking about the narcissist or how women hate on you or how to get a better cutoff game. So I think that social media can be amazing if we just, again, approach it on, where can I find the people and the resources that are going to help me get to where I want to be? And that's why I appreciate everything that you do on your page, because you give us enough entertainment, but you're also planting those seeds and giving those morsels to help us think about, like, what are we doing? How are we being towards ourselves to help us have these boundaries and just really just how to thrive in our lives. And having healthy relationships is part of how you thrive. So I want to make sure the audience knows about your programs and resources and services. So tell us a little bit about Heart Convos. Like, how did you get started? How did you start that?
Again, I kind of alluded, to it earlier in our conversation that I was a trash friend for a long time. I really was. Like I am, uh, was raised by a single mom and a military brat also. So my mother did get married and married a military man. And so those two experiences in my life shaped and started to form the story that I told myself. One, that people can leave for no other reason than they want to. And I felt that way about my biological father. And then the second thing, being a military brat teaches you that nothing lasts
Mhm.
forever because you just move every 3 years. And when you're young and you're a child, you don't really have concept of time. So you just like, oh, we was here and now we not here no more, right? And so changing schools a
Yeah.
lot, moving a lot every 3 years into high school, um, just kind of taught me like, hey, we'll be here until we not. And so I took those two stories and I let that inform how I did relationships with other people. And so it made me a very cold hearted, like fleeting fair weather friend, like here one day, not here the other day. Like, oh, we got issues. Okay, well, I'm out, like, and I'm gone and I don't care nothing about it. And if you don't like it, you don't have to stay. You can go, like, very just, ugh, right?
Hmm.
And it wasn't until I took a long look into my own mirror and I started to see the fruit that was like being reproduced in my life around my relationships. I think I started to see my own need to be known and to feel loved and accepted. And I started to think about relationships and think then and could see like, man, like people don't stick around. Something ends up like putting us into a big fight or argument and relationships are unraveling and it gets dramatic and we have an unhealthy attachment and all this like I started to notice those patterns and I was like, okay, so what do I need to do to fix it? Because I can't fix them. So I'm like, if I'm the only person that I
Right.
can really change and impact, what do I need to do? And so I had an experience in 2007 at this organization that I started working for that really just changed my life forever. And it was that experience that showed me that it was possible to develop communities of friends and people that were deep, meaningful, genuine, authentic, honest, all the things that I champion. But that it doesn't just happen, which is what I believe for a long time, that it would just happen, but that there were some strategic things that you could do in order to cultivate that in your life. And I started doing that work in 2007. And so that's really how it all started for me. I've done a TED Talk on 9 ways to tell if your friends are trash because I've lived all 9 of those things. I have a couple of other talks on YouTube that you can Google if you just type in Kristen, KB Newton, it'll pop up. And Heart Combos again was started as a passion project a few years ago after having a lot of conversations with other women who were saying, I cannot figure this community thing out, this friendship thing out, this relationship thing. And it's ticking me off. And you kind of see people get to this edge where they're like, I'm about to throw people away altogether. And I think at that point I was like,
Yeah.
yo, I don't want to see that happen. So Heart Combos started as a vlog and then the pandemic hit and it turned into my full time work. And so I have absolutely loved the growth that I have seen over the last 4 years. God has been so gracious to us and there's a lot of expansion opportunities on the table right now. And we're just trying to figure out how we want to do that. But if people want to lean into this work that they've heard me talk about, if they're like, man, I want to figure out what this 5 levels of connection thing is she's talked about, or all these different kinds of relationships, if they want that, then really all they have to do is go to heartcombos.com. If you go to heartcombos.com, you'll see that I have a monthly membership subscription if you want to subscribe for a month or for a year, where you can essentially create an account and get access to just nuggets of information that start to change your mind and change the way you think and give you opportunity to ask questions around connection and friendship. If you want a deeper dive, you can take my Make Better Connections Challenge, which is something that I typically do once a month, not every month, but usually once a month. It's a 5-day virtual experience if you want to dive in for an hour every day. And then beyond that, if you're in corporate or you're like, hey, I just need you to come talk to my whole team. I just need you to come talk to my
Yeah.
whole church community or whatever it might be. I also have resources if you go to heartcombos.com/workplace that we've created for people who are in corporate spaces to really help push these conversations forward in the workplace. So those are some ways that people can get resources, and you can always follow me on all social media platforms at Heart Combos.
Wonderful. Thank you. Oh my gosh. I'm so proud of you. I'm so glad that like I found you. See, this is why I love social media. Like I meet the coolest people, like the best people.
Oh, you're so
So thank
gracious. Thank
you
you.
for
And likewise,
everything you're doing.
likewise, the conversation has been enjoyable for me, and I love what you're doing with your platform. And so, thank you for promoting women and promoting Black women. I absolutely love it, and again, would love to come back and have another conversation if you would have me. So,
Absolutely. As you were talking, I'm like, ooh, and I did jot down some things. I'm like, there's so many other things I would love to dig in and collaborate on
let's
with
do it.
you. So you were amazing and absolutely amazing. Is there anything that you'd like to leave the audience with before we wrap up?
Any one nugget, um, I've said it again multiple times in the conversation, and that is, you were made for deep, meaningful connection. And if you have found yourself in a hopeless place, in a discouraged place, in an overwhelmed place, in a drained place, right, regarding people, and you ain't trying to have no more conversations or talk about it, if it just feels too hard to do, just know that having heart combos and having deep, meaningful connections, it's a skill that you can learn. Okay, it's not just for a certain kind of person or a person who's wired a certain way. Like, making deep, meaningful connections is a skill. And it's just a skill that you might not be privy to yet, right? It's a skill that you don't know how to really put into motion yet. And if you position yourself to learn that skill, just like every other skill you've learned in your life, and you can look at your entire life and see all the things that you learned how to do, right? And I'm only saying that because I have a 5-year-old who I'm like, she don't quite know how to tie her shoes yet. Like, that's an all day event right now. Whereas if I was to ask any person listening to this podcast to tie your shoe, you could tie your shoe, say the Star Spangled Banner, fuss at your kids, chew gum, all at the same time. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
because you've mastered the ability to tie your shoe. Again, so
Yeah.
many things in your life are like that, and I use that as a simple illustration, but it's just really a way to communicate to people your ability to make deep, meaningful connections is just a skill that it might be underdeveloped in your life, and if you're willing to develop it, you could literally change the trajectory of your life and your relationships from this day forward. So I would encourage each of you to go to heartconvos.com, HeartConvos. Jump in on whatever level feels good for you right now. And I'll see you on the inside, and we'll start doing the work together.
Thank you. I will have all of those links in the description box for the YouTube video and on the podcast app. So if you're listening or watching, just click the description and you'll be able to go to Hearts Convos directly. So thank you so much, Kristen. It's
You're
KB.
welcome.
I appreciate you and everything that you are doing. And we will be collaborating again.
Awesome.
So
Awesome. Awesome.
thank you.